Let's get to the big events that took place this past week in Las Vegas after SmackDown, and we'll talk briefly about some stuff from SmackDown in a little while. But let's get to the Hall of Fame, because happily it ended in time for us to record this show. I thought I was the only one when I said, I'll watch this tomorrow, I'm going to bed. But watching it back and seeing the people in the crowd, the wrestlers who had to be there, it wasn't just me. Jim, let's talk about the 2025 class of the WWE Hall of Fame.
They went to bed too. They just didn't go back to their hotel rooms to do it. They just sacked out right there. No, I swear, a part of it, well, most of it was not the talent's fault, that this was the most boring presentation. It looked like you had piped into the closed circuit intercompany broadcast of a goddamn presentation by the CEO with graphics on the screen. Every employee was nodding off. Or maybe at catering, they served soma soup with propofol croutons. But it was just, the whole thing was dreary. There's going to be more excitement at the Pope's funeral. And they started it at 10 p.m. local time. And you saw guys in the crowd that had been on SmackDown, that had been beat the shit out of themselves. And I'm sure let's see, that's a 3-hour show. So if it was off at 8 o'clock Pacific time, they would have started at 5. The talent had probably been there since 11 o'clock maximum in the morning at the other building, on top of whatever the fuck else is going on out there. And it looked like people had been herded in there at threat of losing their jobs. And they would applaud for their friends and or co-workers, but where were the fans, Jerry? There were no fans, Jerry. Did they have any? I mean, there was a lot of people in the building, but you only saw the shots of the crowd on the floor. I think there was a balcony, but with just they cut to the boys. There was no real fan interaction. Could you hear them up there in the balcony chirping or snoring?
Well, they also kept it really dark, which probably didn't help everyone falling asleep. Well, you couldn't even see. You couldn't really see how many people were there and where they were.
Oh yeah, and that big ass stage, McAfee was dressed like a cat burglar, and Michael Cole, at least he would look like Orson Welles in a 50s fucking B movie. He looked like he was on vacation in fucking Panama or something. But they had no podium for the host, Cole and McAfee, who had the headset mics and were just standing awkwardly, like 10 feet apart from each other on the stage, and didn't know what to do with their hands. They were gesticulating, broadly, and so just wandering around. And they were not, a comedy duo that was really engaging in any snappy banter or repartee to begin with. And Christ on a cracker, it just, and again, you said right before we went on the air, you said, well, when you criticize the production and the et cetera of this, people are like, well, yeah, you go ahead and do it yourself or whatever. But I have actually been in the production of the Hall of Fame as a participant, and there were fans there that were reacting. Because it was in in Orlando, they did, I can't remember the name of the new building downtown, but it's the big sports arena where they were doing the other fucking television shows. They had fans there. They also started at 8 o'clock local time, but there was some energy. There was some excitement. This was like like I said, you piped in on an inter-office closed circuit that was only for the people in the company, which was actually kind of verified by when the fucking boss came out and talked for an hour and a half until it was 1:30 in the fucking morning or whatever out there. What the fuck? Help me, Brian.
How? How should I help you with this? No,
I,
it was like your principal and the art teacher got up on stage to host a talent show. It was just so awkward. It was just so awkward. They didn't match the energy and whatever. There was no energy. But this was an awkward Hall of Fame, if you really think about it. The last few years, and I'm not saying this was perfect, because it certainly wasn't. They've been doing the Hall of Fame right after SmackDown. The fans are still there. They take down the ropes. It was a great look, but the fans were unreliable from either making too much noise during an induction or tackling Bret Hart. Like, we've seen how that goes awry, that kind of setup.
And by the way, I'm not laughing that the guy tackled Bret Hart. I'm laughing at I just remembered the guy tackled Bret Hart. It was the Hall of Fame. But go ahead.
But Heyman last year, you think about him doing a speech and his kids are in the front row and he's in the ring looking down on them. Take that in your mind and then look at this year. They're on the biggest stage you've ever seen. It's like they're 10 feet above everyone. And there's just no energy.
It was the Hollywood Bowl. It's like you need binoculars to fucking pass out to the fans so they can see the people on stage.
So it was a different energy than they've had. And, no disrespect to the people that it means a lot to. And I'll say it here, I loved the natural disasters induction. I thought that was tremendous. But it's hard to take this year seriously and not think that it's just some slapdash thing when it's literally Paul Levesque, who deserves to be in their Hall of Fame, and they really just made it a tribute to Paul Levesque. We'll get to that. But he's there. Like, it's not like we have to worry about getting him in time. Unless he's sick, he's there. And Michelle McCool, inducted by her husband, which, again, you look at it, you're like, I could see why this means a lot to them, but this isn't supposed to be about them. But, you think of it, there's always been, James Dudley got into the Hall of Fame. It's all about the people in charge, making sure the people they care about have a moment to be celebrated. But this year's Hall of Fame felt like it was lacking a lot. And, Bret Hart and Steve Austin kind of got the energy going a little bit, and they were out there less time probably than everyone.
Yeah, because they knew that it was a fucking death march and they need to get in and get out. But that's the thing. They started late. It was most of the boys and the families of the boys. And if there were fans, they were few in number or they were asleep upstairs also. And the energy level, even though some people tried, as I was making notes with DDP inducted Luger first, and they did a nice package on Luger. And, DDP is not a boring speaker. Of course, he was, reading it off of his tablet. I wish if guys are going to have notes, at least make them use paper, because it looked like he was a newscaster trying to keep up with the goddamn teleprompter. But anyway, he usually has energy, and he tried to put Lex over and nice verbiage, but it was just like he was in this big empty fucking room. I wrote, you need to hold a mirror up in front of the crowd's mouths. And then Lex came out, was introduced, obviously. And they were saying they'd been working on him walking, some distance. I don't know if they knew how big this stage was, but walking some distance at this event. But they wheeled him out in the chair and he stood for it. And he explained that he had taken a bump, evidently getting in his Uber car or whatever the day before at the airport, but at least he was standing up. And Lex was, again, he was very honest, and he's so much more personable now, as we've talked about a number of times, than he was maybe back in the day. And he admits it. And his speech was nice. And he talked about not being a wrestling fan until he was out of the business, which we've discussed. But, people were polite, but it's fucking late at night and they're in this giant stage with this dead crowd and there's just no energy. And it was a shame. I'm sure everybody, involved, as you said, was into the moment, but again, when you have some level of intimacy with a small crowd that at least is wanting to see the legends, or you have a big crowd that's wanting to see the legends, and you've got some of the boys in the family and mixed in. You've got some atmosphere, but I don't, maybe somebody, if there was even any fucking regular fan there, could they check in if they're listening and let us know what the percentage was of boys that were falling asleep with their families because they'd been up for 3 days and regular people. Even the legends didn't get pops. The Kamala, not that, it would bring the house down like the appearance of Steve Austin, but just familiar names. That Taker came out and they're applauding, but it's like, oh God, we need to move again. And he introduced, as you mentioned, his lovely wife, who came out and talked for, I'm sure it was almost 20 minutes, but my God, it just, I couldn't even process what was going on at some point. I zoned out. She was very happy about everything. And she's painfully thin. Was there any highlight of this so far that I've missed that you think we should bring up?
Again, The Undertaker clearly loves his wife tremendously and obviously has changed his life tremendously. He's not chasing Jenna Jameson anymore.
So, and apparently it's her fault.
And again, I understand why this means a lot to them. I understand why it may have been insisted that this has to happen. But it's a WWE Hall of Fame, not the people who made my life special Hall of Fame. And it's not about Undertaker. I had this complaint about Leah Maivia. She'd be in the Grandmother Hall of Fame, but the WWE Hall of Fame, let alone any wrestling Hall of Fame, let alone whitewashing her history, I have an issue with. Michelle McCool was not a top star, and they made this video and they presented her like she was a revolutionary wrestler who is influencing women to get involved in the business today. I don't think that's the case. And again, I know this meant a lot to The Undertaker, and obviously it meant a lot to her to be put in a wrestling Hall of Fame. She gave a longer speech than almost anyone other than Triple H, I guess.
She gave a longer speech than her career.
I mean, it's astounding. So, again, I'm happy that they're happy, but this is one of those things that delegitimizes a Hall of Fame that needs any legitimacy it can get. And,
well, but I wonder at this point,
it's a rewriting of history. It's a pretending of things and events that didn't happen in order to make The Undertaker happy. And I got a problem with that.
Should they at this point just make it an industry dinner thing?
Yeah, it should be the Cauliflower Alley Club. Here's someone we really like who's here every year. Let's give him the Mike Lano Award. Here he is, Joe the Doofus. Yeah, it should be like that.
No, wait a minute. Joe the Doofus was already inducted sometime back.
That's right.
But no, I'm talking about not televise it, not advertise it. Just make it for all of us then, all of us in the industry, as they say, or in their industry, the WWE specific industry. You can't come if you're an indie guy. I don't know. But as a television production, you need to have stars and you need to have an atmosphere. And you need to not start it at fucking midnight and go for 3.5 fucking hours.
I think the Michelle McCool speech going forever, and this turning into a tribute to Michelle McCool, who was one of the women there, who never, look at history, she never meant anything towards the business or anything. It's just she was one of the women there, and she happened to marry The Undertaker. And they gave her endless time. They rushed Bill Watts and the Funks and everyone else. Like, you got 2 minutes, get out there. And they pushed him off the stage. They gave her endless time. And I think that is another reason why just the room felt like it was dying. I'm sure there were people happy for her, but they would have been happy for her with a 5-minute speech. Instead
Well,
of
now
instead of this turned into it turned into the Undertaker apparently has been watching way too much Joel Osteen or Joe Osteen, whatever his name is, and he's now just
I vaguely know he's some type of preacher, and that's why I've avoided the rest of it.
and that's like the Undertaker's shtick. If you watch the way he conducts himself on stage, he's like a wrestling preacher now, it seems like. And I feel like this was their big moment. And just like it'll be her big thing when she's on the show instead of Mickey James. But I feel like it was for them and it wasn't anything about WWE history or anything about the wrestling fans. It was just, this would make The Undertaker happy, so let's do it. So,
But I wanted to
ridiculous.
correct you or verify you on one thing. It wasn't like she was the only one that they didn't rush, though. So now she was not the Lone Ranger there. Well, they couldn't rush the boss, but you mentioned they rushed the Funks when they were actually there. Dory Funk Sr., my favorite part of the goddamn whole thing was the video they had because there's not enough in the public domain accessible footage of Dory Sr. But they had some nice pictures and video, and I wrote way too short. I would have taken 10 minutes of Dory Funk Sr. at this point just to cleanse my palate. And then they teased us with the main event because they did a package here on Triple H, even though there'll be another package on Triple H. And it was a history package done by the Fox Sports guy, I guess. They gave him credit, and it was nice stuff. And then they featured in this thing the curtain call, and that's when I kind of lost interest and got pissed and fast forwarded. They still don't need to keep trying to justify that to the world like it was something they should have done or that was the right thing to do. Talk about rewriting history. That's when it was since they have come from the dead to gain power. All of the Click members still, it was revolutionary. It was the greatest thing that was ever done. And and Russo bought it, and he was guilty of that also. But they can't just let people forget about it. They can't admit that they fucked up and shit the bed.
Because it's a big part of the Triple H backstory. The real thing it led to that actually helped was Steve Austin winning King of the Ring and giving that promo.
Yeah.
But they make it now that it's the big part of the Triple H backstory. He had so much to fight against because Vince was going to punish him, while at the same time hanging out with him and Shawn. So, I mean, it was, it's a big part of the mythology of Triple H. So obviously it had to be here.
The mythology. And they did a nice package on Earthquake and Typhoon, the natural disasters. And Fred Ottman was there and John Tenta's family. But did I miss it somehow, or was there no one to induct them per se? They just brought them out there.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And so that was.
And Jimmy Hart was there.
I was about to say, I swear to God, I was about to say Jimmy Hart was in the audience, wasn't he? They cut to shots of him. He was at his age at that time of night. He looked a little more alert than most of them.
Shave time. Michelle McCool went long.
Yeah, just bring out the family. Bring out your dad. But no, again, there was no atmosphere. But John Tenta's son was very well spoken. Was the best speaking family member ever, I think. And he kept it short to the point. He had a pleasant personality, of delivery you could understand. Seemed to be a well-groomed young man, and fucking brought it in on time. And people gave him a nice little, as good of a nice little hand as this room was given all night. I'd like to adopt that boy.
I thought this was the highlight of the Hall of Fame. I actually really liked it. And just seeing Fred Ottman out there with the Tenta family, it was very moving. It was very touching. And I recognized a few of the kids from Dark Side. Remember, they were interviewed on there. So I was like, oh, it's nice to see them again almost. Oh, there they are again. Yeah. I actually thought this was kind of the highlight of it. And this was like the feel-good moment of the whole thing for me.
Well, yeah, because in Lex, just
Yeah,
seeing
but
him that he's still. Well, no, I'm saying that here. Follow me on this train of thought, Lex, and that he's still around and everything. And Earthquake and Typhoon were the only, as I'm looking at my notes were the only inductions or inductees in indictees, whatever the fuck, the only people that went in that aren't usually coming back around to begin with and still with the company or married to someone still with the company. Was Undertaker, it's the WrestleMania guy, Undertaker, Austin, Brett. Yes, that's wonderful, but it's not like any other, goddamn legends actually got in here, was it? Did it?
no.
See?
And again, it's not like there aren't a lot of guys there. It's not like there aren't guys you'd really want to try to get to right now, based on age, based on a lot of things. I thought they just signed their Legends deal. Demolition would have been great to have them in there. Maybe they'll be in next year.
I saw them in a crowd shot.
Yeah, they're not getting any younger. They're not in. Ivan Koloff, they put him in. He got one of those.
Wait,
videos
hey, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Darso's like 2 years older than me. Fuck you now.
Well, you guys too, obviously. You and the Midnight Express.
No, I'm saying you said that Darso and Bill Eadie ain't getting any younger. Fucking Darso's 2 years older than me.
You know what I mean.
So don't put me in the goddamn.
Well, you're the one who kept calling yourself a senior citizen.
I'm still saying there's plenty. Look at the AARP magazine. There's plenty of fucking active senior citizens, motherfucker. I'm just saying I don't want to go in the Hall of Fame, but I don't want to put in the category of do it while it's still time.
Oh, look who's on the cover of this month's issue, Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, son of a bitch.
See, there you go.
Slap him.
No, you will not slap him. For the record, he's a wonderful, lovable man who's out there doing God's work for the American people still.
He's way too fucking happy.
He's a happy man. Put on a happy face. Come on, Jim. Let's get back to this Hall of Fame. What was the question at hand? We were talking about legends.
Yes,
not being put in.
we were mentioning that there was an opportunity for some other actual legends that you don't just see pop up every few months on the regular programming that could have gone in, but this was more of an industry function.
See, that's the thing I think a lot of fans do want. The one thing I always enjoyed under the Vince years, even though the finished product would usually end up pissing me off, but I always liked the idea of, it's this year's Raw reunion or whatever. And then, there's IRS, there's Ted DiBiase. You don't even need to see him give speeches, you just want to at least see them. And when the only sight you get of some of these people at WWE TV ever is like in a dark room sitting next to... Does Paul Heyman not sit back? Did you see Heyman sitting down? He either sits at the edge of his chair, or he doesn't sit back, and I'm not piling on like you, or he's so rotund that he can't go back any further.
Well, see, here, I can explain that to you here, because see now, and some people out there in podcast land will understand this. Because of his rotundity and the way that the geographical and gravitational forces imbalance the fucking corpulence, if he leans back, then gets the narcolepsy and he starts snoring. He's got the sleep apnea because the jowls constrict his airways. So he has to lean forward so that he can actually intake oxygen through the cholesterol infested fucking arteries. That's the medical description.
He was more forward than anyone else in his row. It looked like like a spotlight was turned on. He was ready for it.
He also may have been constipated.
We have nothing to base this on, but he may have been.
I don't know it for a fact, but a lot of people are saying it. Anyhow, the next highlight of this thing was the package, the video of the Brett and Austin match from WrestleMania. And just the highlights. I wrote, this is a completely different product. Nothing looks like this today. It's sad. The level of aggression and violence, that they gave off, and the aura of animosity. And not only that, but the people jumping up and down, batshit at that point because they were into it, and it gave you the overall aura of some shit going down instead of, yeah, we're going to put in 20 minutes here tonight, folks. And you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, it also stood out from even wrestling in 1996 or 1997. It wasn't like there was anything else on the card like that. It was the standout match. It's probably still the greatest match in WWE history.
Well, I'm not even talking about the quality of the match. I'm just saying in the highlights, you see moments, and you had moments like that with Brett and Taker, or moments like that with Taker and Austin, or moments like that with fucking Foley, or all of those, that top guy mix. You know, you can go back and look at highlights and say, Jesus Christ, those guys trying to fucking rip each other to shreds compared to what most of the time you are seeing today. There are a few scant practitioners of the art that are trying, but the chaos of the thing. Anyway, and they had they had Punk come out to fucking do the induction here of the match, and again, after we've heard from a variety of people at length, he said, they've given me 2 minutes. Why didn't everybody else get 2 minutes? Is what I wrote. What the fuck is this guy? The most cunning linguist on the roster, perhaps, and he gets 2 minutes to induct the best match they ever fucking had. Which he called the greatest match in WrestleMania history. It's perfect. And I think as we've said, I can't argue it's the greatest match in WrestleMania history. I think I've said before, was that quantifying my favorite WrestleMania match or just my favorite WWF match? Because it looked like a goddamn pro wrestling match. But anyway, and he named all of his mentors that have passed away. Fucking thankfully I wasn't on that list, although you were trying to rush me here a minute ago. And he was glad that Steve and Brett are still there to get their flowers. And I'm pretty sure they're happier with the check if there was some flowers in their room, but the check is probably the most important thing over the weekend. But he introduces Steve Austin and Bret Hart, and they get a soupçon of response. I mean, could it be that they just had no crowd audio and there was a balcony going absolutely batshit for the biggest stars in the history of the business? Or was it their fucking immediate family that was now up at midnight, on a long day going...
Yeah, this is just hours after SmackDown. Everyone had to go get changed and come to this thing and sit there. And Michelle McCool went long. So I think there were a variety of elements that did not make this a pleasurable experience, seemingly for the viewer at home and the viewer there.
And the viewer there. Perhaps we should call them the hostages, the captives. And they get a bust with half of each guy's head. So now what if they ever induct a tag match? Will it look like the incredible four-headed fucking transplant? Half the guy's head smacked onto the side of each other is the trophy for the great match or moment or whatever the fuck they're calling.
What do you do with that? What if you're like inducted for a match with someone you hate?
Well, but yeah, besides that, which one gets it? Do they have to split it like 6 months and 6 months? Fuck it. If Brett still lives in Calgary, he'll take it in the wintertime, I guess.
Yeah, but if it's like a match with someone like you personally don't like, do you want to have half their face in your office?
No. Well, actually, I'd like to have half of one of their bones of some description. Maybe one that I'd broken personally. I could fucking, you know what? That would be something. Now I'm thinking about at some point.
Well, I'm afraid.
Besides the urination that I've promised, I wonder if I could do a little do-it-yourself exhumation after the fact and get a souvenir
for the
like
record,
a leg bone or a ankle bone.
Urinating on the grave was probably pushing it to the limit.
I didn't say anything about a grave.
I think going into the ground to pull a bone, that may be a bit of an issue.
Well, it could be at the dog park.
That may be a step too far. Or
Knick-knack, paddywhack, give Corny a bone.
Or a dig too far.
That old shit stain's coming home. All righty.
I mean, just I don't know. It's not as impressive. Yeah, there's Vince Russo's femur. Like, I don't know. Like, it would have to be like the jaw or something. It couldn't be like, there's his pinky.
He doesn't have a femur. He has a female. Anyway, so back to the Hall of Fame. The Steve turned on the personality for keep it basic and simple, just like his speech, just like he approached the match. And he had some personality, and he thanked Vince, and he thanked JR, and he thanked Lawler for announcing it, those three guys. And then he drank some beer with Bret Hart and Pat McAfee, and boom, and he got out of there, as did Bret, who looked thrilled about the whole thing, while the getting was good.
Imagine the pop Bret would have gotten, at least from the fans, if he said, that Vince was a dirty pervert. Like, everyone's like, how could I not say thank you? Well, you, of course, but you could also say, I had no idea he was the devil.
Well, you know what? If Stu was still around, he'd go, I told you. He said, I knew it. They were all perverts. All of them were the perverts. Oh. Ivan Koloff, they had some nice footage.
They could have at least invited nephew Nikita to induct him, but nothing.
Nothing. Now, his wife, Renee, nice lady, she was in the audience, and she did a little parade wave, and then they moved on. And again, Cole and McAfee, let's go back to how not good they were in this environment, in this role, I don't know what if you're going to be speaking to people on that giant of a stage, and I'm going to defend them here for a minute for not being any good. If you're on a stage that fucking big and you're talking to a crowd that fucking dead, and you're standing 10 feet apart from the guy that you're supposed to be trying to do in between some witty repartee with, or, a little broom-doomp or some lively conversation, or just lead to the next thing or whatever. They're standing apart like they've just found out the other one has anthrax in his pocket, and they have no microphone to hold on to, so they got nothing to do with their hands because it's strapped around their head, and there's no podium to lean on as one does when one is speaking to a large group of people. It was just fucking awkward. And it looked like they were ready to fucking get the fuck out of there. And then they did another Triple H video. Nothing else matters. I have a feeling that was the theme of the fucking show here so far. As long as we just make Triple H happy and give him about an hour and a half, nothing else matters.
It was like his actual matches in his heyday. Just went on and on. And his promos. Remember he used to open up Raw with like a 20-minute promo?
Yes. See, nostalgia clouds and we're not saying that Triple H is an idiot and that he's a shits and a blah, blah, blah. He's doing a better job than the people that have prefaced him have, so we're not taking that away from him. But at the time, there was some interminable talking going on, and long matches that was a concerted effort to get him over. And now they have an entire catalog of footage that they can use that shows how fucking over he is.
Wasn't that why Pat Patterson went home? Like, Vince, I think you're pushing...
What, the video was too long?
No, Vince, I think you're pushing your son-in-law too much. Oh, okay. Pat, it's time to go home.
Well, he didn't exile him to an island forever, but I think at one point Pat may have made that suggestion. But I mean, even this video, which, my God, the clips they had, I don't know how many production assistants they may have put onto just locating. He's on this show and that show and this famous appearance and that fucking thing and this fucking match and that. And they put this thing together to make, after this, he should run. I was going to say for president of the United States, I think president of North Korea. I don't know if maybe this might not be a wag the dog kind of thing where these people need to go make videos for Kim Duck. What's his name over there? Kim Jong-il's son.
It's not Kim Duck. That's Tiger Chung-Lee you're speaking of.
Well, and
which name you like better?
Too.
Which name you like better, Kim Duck or Tiger Chung-Lee?
Well, Kim Duck is the first one that I knew because that's the first one he was using. But when you hear Tiger Chung Lee, it probably is a little bit more fearsome than Kim Duck.
I think so,
You
yes.
know, yeah.
Into the WWE Hall of Fame next year, Kim Duck.
Kim Duck or Spring Roll or whatever the fuck. It just sounds no. When you get to Tiger Chung Lee.
Tiger Chung Lee.
All right, well, here's Tiger Triple H. So it was 10 to midnight local time when they introduced Shawn Michaels to come out and introduce the main event inductee. And honestly, Michaels gave a great speech and was heartfelt in points with how hard it was for Triple H to stay his friend, and he wasn't reading it. It was from the heart. He got choked up on a couple of occasions, and honestly, I think he was legitimate because in my experience with Michaels, he's not that good of a promo that he could have faked any of this. And still, it needed a more receptive audience. I don't know. The boys and their families, they probably didn't know how to react, or there may have been some eye rolling amongst each other in the audience with their heads down. But it was, finally when he introduced Triple H, they got the pop of the night, the best pop that the night offered, because at that point, after they've showed that video, it's past fucking midnight. The crowd is in the show has been dead so far, and here comes the boss. Everybody's going to try to contribute something. But then he was there for the next 1 hour. And I believe, do I have it exactly? I was going to say hour and 20 minutes, but I'm 1 hour
17.
and 22 minutes.
Oh, I thought it was 117.
Well, it was 1 hour and 22 minutes after Shawn began. I'm sorry. So an hour and 17 minutes.
If the kids today ever want to know what it felt like to sit through a Triple H main event, now you know.
What happened also? Even again, when I was there in Orlando, this was only 7 years ago or whatever it was. You got to have a tux. I had to go get the tux. Everybody had to have the tux. They're just out to Michael Cole, as I said, looked like, goddamn the hero of a fucking Raymond Chandler movie in the 50s. But anyway, Triple H came out and he was choked up too a few times in this thing. He shouted out Rich Herring, and there Rich Herring stood up 55 years since the WWF. And let's just put it this way. Rich's hair style has not changed with the times, but his hairpiece his color has changed with his age. Let's just put it that way. But I like Rich Herring. He was always a nice guy to me.
Now let's point out some other wig wearers in the crowd. Hey, Jim, did you see Kowalski?
Well, it's not like that anybody couldn't fucking tell. That's the thing. I
thought he was like a Dick Van Dyke. He just had a healthy head of hair at an older age.
Well, at least he's healthy, and because he's older. But as Triple H said, if shit was really bad, call the wolf. Okay. Then he talked because he said, it's not about me, it's the people who got me here. And then he proceeded over the next hour and some minutes to thank everyone that he has ever had an interaction with in his life. Would you like to hear them in order, Brian?
Oh, no.
He thanked his parents, his sister, his friends from the gym, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ted Arcidi, who sent him to Killer Kowalski, Eric Bischoff, Dusty Rhodes, got choked up about Dusty, Arn Anderson, who he was the designated driver of, Harley Race, Steve Austin, Mick Foley, Terry Taylor, who apparently had some kind of medical issue earlier in the day, and he didn't think he was there, and they got a shot of Terry sitting in the audience.
Oh. What was the medical issue? Bird flu? He's a rooster.
I don't. I don't know what, but hopefully, our old friend Terry is feeling well. But maybe he got nervous. He was scared for his job if he didn't come back and make it. In this fucking North Korean goddamn propaganda performance they're putting on here. But anyway, Steve Regal. Triple H was supposed to be one of the Blue Bloods with Steve Regal, apparently.
Well, he was teaming with Steve Regal right before he left WCW.
That's when Earl Robert Eaton would have come into being. Is that correct then? Bobby would have been after that?
That's right.
So there you go. They bleeped the F in WWF when he said that. And how the fuck?
Even TKO are afraid of the World Wildlife Federation. It wasn't just Jerry McDivitt they beat. Everyone's afraid of them.
So anyway, then he proceeds the rest of and he said he wanted when he went to the WWF, he wanted to be with the guys that were talking about business in the car, and the other guys didn't want to talk business. Well, at least in my experience, almost everybody in the wrestling business talked business in the car. That's what me and the Midnight Express did, but perhaps we were just, feathers of a different horse also, or a flock of a different color, or whatever the case may be.
Maybe don't ride with Marty Jannetty. Maybe just go with someone else.
Maybe it was just the company he had been in that didn't want to talk, but nevertheless. So he got in with Nash and Hall and Michaels and Waltman, and they talked about the business. And he told a story about the first night he rode with them. They created a scene at Denny's and took Waltman to the hospital, and that's when he decided to ride with them for good. And then he thanked China and Road Dogg and Billy and Steve Austin again and Mick Foley again and Orton and Batista and Ric Flair.
Where's Dwayne? Where's Dwayne?
He didn't thank him. Not on my list. He thanked Dr. Jim Andrews and everybody in Birmingham. And that is, Dr. Andrews in Birmingham has put more of the boys, not just of this company, but in general for the past 30 years back together than probably most people.
They showed the footage of when he tore his quad and then came back 8 months later. If there was ever a better argument for why steroids are good, they should make it there. Like, if I wasn't loaded to the tits on steroids here, I would have been out a year and a half. But because I had steroids used for the reasons that they were actually supposed to be used for, healing my muscles, healing my body, I was able to come back. But I guess.
But then, Brian, somebody might say the loophole in that was if he wasn't juiced to the tits on steroids, he wouldn't have torn his quad to begin with.
Well, that's true, too. We saw a lot of muscle tears that were never seen before in science with the introduction of steroids into wrestling and the infiltration in the late 80s and early 90s. Just muscle ripped off the bone everywhere.
So what steroids giveth, steroids taketh awayeth. Or do they take them awayeth first and then they giveth backeth?
It depends. It depends if you get to meet DDP.
Bang. But anyway, then he talked about the creative, good God. Yes, good God, he's still talking. He talked about going to the production meetings, and he mentioned Lanza and Patterson, and George Steele put Pat Patterson over. That's why he was inspired to build a developmental system. They already had one. They just didn't spend any money on it. He might not have been paying attention. But that horse had already left the barn, Cowboy, as far as the idea of that whole situation. But he was inspired. And Dusty again. And he put the NXT talent over. Said, most of the people here are, from NXT, except for all the stars that they're putting in all the title matches for Cena and Orton. But nevertheless, It was dragging now. I was writing. Oh, he mentioned Michael Hayes was a unique individual. He thanked Bruce Pritchard, one of the writers, the crew, the riggers, Paul Heyman, who he called the consigliere. Linda was sitting there in the crowd with Stephanie. Stephanie has more wrinkles now than Linda does since she's had her face stretched. He thanked Shane, who wasn't there. He thanked Vince, who wasn't there, because it's a complicated story. He's a complicated man, and no one loves him but his woman.
If unannounced Vince showed up, would they have let him in?
I don't know. I wonder. Well, and here's the thing: it wouldn't have been up to. The final word would have not have been up to Triple H. And he's probably happy about that. Because I'm sure he gets to fucking not be the final word on some things being involved in the company and still in the family.
Here's a question for you based on not really being around him at all the last several years. Do you think Vince watched this?
No, well, definitely not. I don't think when it was on the air live. He's fucking 80 years old and he's on the Eastern time zone. So
that's head shitting time. You can't do that.
Well, so this thing, if you watched it live on the East Coast on Peacock, it would not have been over until 4:30 in the morning. And this is about 4:15 here. But he said he loved Vince. He's the father of his grandchildren or the grandchildren. You know what I'm saying.
He's the father of his grandchildren. Holy shit. Genetic jackhammer. I had no idea.
Son of a, he's the
sick
children's
family, just sick.
That's
sick people.
Stop it. The sickness, it's spreading like wildfire. No, he's the children's grandfather. And it's complicated, but he wouldn't be there without him. When somebody helps you that much, you owe them. So thank you, Vince. And then he went to Taker and he thanked Taker for giving him advice about Stephanie. And at that point, I've notated that we were 3 hours into this program and he said he was getting some signals. He's going to be done in a couple of minutes. And he proceeded to go another 20 fucking minutes.
What were the signals? Everyone closing their eyes?
Yes, I think somebody may have fainted from the camera position, like the camera guy just fell over and he said, I'm getting some signals. He talked about his heart issue, reordering his priorities. He talked about his daughters, Aurora, Murphy, and Vaughn. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any three of those names, but does that what motif were the parents going for with they seem like very divergent names, Aurora, Murphy, and Vaughn.
Names to make Vince happy.
Is Murphy Irish?
I think
Murphy's Irish.
I think Murphy was named for Vince, yeah.
What about Vaughn?
How do you spell Vaughn?
Vaughn V. Well, I don't know. It's a woman, but the name Vaughn, I would like Robert Vaughn.
Right. Is that how you would spell it for a woman?
I don't know.
There's that wrestler Viva Vaughn or Viva Van, V-A-N.
Well, no, that would be an an instead of an on.
There's Von.
But what about Aurora?
Aurora
Things like
Borealis.
That's a more hippie-ish type of name. Well, anyway, if they were the Andrews sisters, Vaughn would be Laverne. That's all I'm going to say about that.
So Jim will not be joining the Hall of Fame anytime soon, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Doodly-otta, doodly-otta, doot-doot. So then he thanked Stephanie. And then he thanked Nick Khan. Nick Khan came after Stephanie. I guess it's instead of God and country, it's wife, but boss first. Stephanie, Nick Khan, the best businessman I know. Apparently, this guy, I think, negotiated him out of a goddamn, apparently out of a big lawsuit at WrestleMania. More on that later.
The best businessman I know. Where have you worked? I've worked here. No, Nick Khan is a very, very talented executive.
No. Now think about it. He worked there and he worked in WCW under Turner. So he met a bunch of fucking
The worst
ultra
executives.
qualified businessmen. And then he is heartfelt in the way that Triple H, that is, and how wrestling hooks you and it's all you ever want to do. And he tries to be positive and he thanks the fans and promises to keep the business alive for the next generation. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 1 hour and 22 minutes, as I notated, after Shawn Michaels began talking about him, he finished talking. Is there a filibuster rule in the Hall of Fame or just in the Senate?
You know, it's one of those things Vince never wanted to be mentioned, let alone be inducted. You know, it creates a weird dynamic when the boss is the person you have to sit there and watch give a very heartfelt speech about their entire life. Like, this was a life speech.
It was cathartic.
It almost, you know, it felt like he had to get it out and do all these things and thank all these people now. And it's nice, but I don't know if it's overindulgence or just self-indulgence. It went forever. You know, how can I complain about Michelle McCool doing a 30-minute Broadway when you had this thing going an hour and a half?
It's a Texas death match.
Yeah, this thing was an hour and a half. And again, I know it meant a lot to him, but was the Hall of Fame this year just about doing things to make the people like Undertaker and Triple H happy about themselves, or was it for the fans and the people there? Triple H is certainly worthy of a WWE Hall of Fame. And again, it was a heartfelt speech, but at a certain point, everyone was ready for a Helix sleep.
They have some level of duty or responsibility to, if they're going to advertise something and put it on television, it has to be worthy of being on television. And this was in the bare minute. I mean, if the video packages hadn't been there, Jesus Christ. So every 30 minutes or an hour or so, you could see some movement. It was like watching goddamn paintings hanging on the wall.
Well, congratulations.
That's got to be the longest one ever, right? Longest Hall of Fame ever.
It was just unbearable. It has to be. Congratulations to the 2025 inductees to the WWE Hall of Fame. We'll see whose wife gets in next year. But you know, Jim, maybe part of the problem why so many people were seemingly falling asleep in the audience there, you're really dodging the elephant in the room. These are a bunch of wrestlers. Some have cauliflower ears. A lot of guys who have taken a lot of bumps. They may be tired. They may have hearing loss. And they may need a little aid, a little friend, a little help, so that they can hear the endless speeches, or really just one endless speech. And I think you know who I'm talking about, our brand new friends with MD Hearing.
Well, I'll tell you what I sure do, bro. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I know I'm yelling. Let me turn my MD hearing aid on. Oh, okay. Now, I'm sorry. Am I still yelling, Brian? Because I can hear so much better. But I'll tell you what, I'll just go back to normal. Because, folks, we have new friends at MD Hearing. And you know what I did, Brian? They comped me one of their fine products because we have this business relationship now. And I didn't know anything about it. And what I did, because Stacy's stepfather, who's recently moved here, you know, I've talked about that on the program. He has hearing loss and is in the past worn hearing aids and has been dissatisfied and has not been wearing them. And that's why you got to go, hey, Dad. But nevertheless, I gave him the pair and I said, check these things out. And son of a gun, now you can go up to him. He can hear a mouse pissing on cotton. You can go up to him and you can go, hey, Dad. He'll go, would you please quit shouting? And I'll tell you what, folks.
It may not be that extreme. It may be just a regular ability
he's
to
an
hear.
Extreme kind of guy.
Extreme Dad?
He has extreme reactions to things. So, you know, but you may have similar results, but we're not promising. But nevertheless, besides that, here's the good thing. A lot of people that need hearing aids may not know how to get them or where to get them or what to do about them, or they may not take the step to do it. Or they may say, well, I can't afford that high priced technology, Brian, because, they think it's like NASA equipment goes into your head in order to do this. They think, I can't spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It's just out of the question. They may not realize, Brian, that MD Hearing can provide you with hearing aids, premium quality hearing aids that are only $297 a pair. This is not like buying a car. And as a matter of fact, one of the comments from one of their fine, satisfied customers was, these are the best hearing aids that you can buy, simple to use, durable, and better than hearing aids that cost 10 times as much. That's right. These things can cost thousands of dollars, but they don't have to. Because MD Hearing was founded by an ENT surgeon. You know what that means, don't you? An ENT surgeon? That means he's into all the different things that go on in your head.
No, that's
what he's into.
No,
that's why they shorten it down for medical purposes.
He's into ear, nose, and throat, ENT.
Oh, yeah, he's all up in your shit, all over the place. He'll go in your nose. He'll go down your throat. He'll stick some shit in your ear.
It's a profession. It's something they study, these doctors. It's
well, yeah. Whichever one. Do they let women do that now? He or she, whichever one, will be just all up in your shit if you go to one of these doctors. But see, you don't have to, because MD Hearing was founded by an ENT surgeon who's all into your head, who saw just how many of his patients needed hearing aids but couldn't afford them. And he made it his mission, his quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless. He made it a mission to develop a quality hearing aid that anybody could afford, and that's what he has done here. And now they have sold over 2 million of these ding-dong dandies, because they offer a 45-day risk-free trial and 100% money-back guarantee. So I'm so excited about these hearing aids. You can buy them with confidence, Brian. You can trust these things because they will give you your money back because it's a risk-free trial. All you got to do, if they don't work for you, you have to take them out of your ears. You got to clean the earwax off of them. That's one thing because they have a detector. It's like one of those neon lights.
No, there's no detector.
If there's any earwax on this son of a bitch, they ain't taking it back.
There is no earwax detection, I guess it would be. There are no neon lights. What you have to worry about.
It's a black light.
Let's talk about neon sounds. You'll be hearing everything happening all around and all abound with MD Hearing.
Oh, yeah. As I said, you'll be able to hear a mouse pissing on cotton. You'll be able to hear a ghost whispering to a grave. But all you got to do, and here's another thing, Brian, also, I forgot to tell you about this. They're small. They're the smallest hearing aids ever from MD Hearing. The Neo XS model. I think it's also got one of those fucking Maserati type engines with the valves and the pistons. So when you rev it up, it sounds real impressive too.
No.
But the Neo XS, the smallest hearing aid ever, nobody will know that it's there. Now, technically, if somebody got in the right position and looked close enough and maybe had either a magnifying glass or one of them little jeweler's things they can stick in their ear or in their eye, they could see that this hearing aid is in your ear, but then they would be invading your personal space. And in most states, you stand your ground, you can elbow them in the nuts or punch them in the fucking face.
Again, let's focus on these wonderful hearing aids at a wonderful
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that if somebody does see these hearing aids in your ear, you can punch them in the fucking face or kick them in the nuts and you won't be charged.
That is not true, and you have no authority to give any sort of disclaimer or any sort of indemnification.
Yes, they'd have to be. Why
am I getting so mad? Close. You're getting me fired up. God damn it, can you hear me now? Ladies and gentlemen,
yes,
MD
you're deafening me. I've got to turn you down. Hold on.
MD Hearing will give you the ability. Lots of us in everyday life, we have some hearing loss. This gives you the ability to hear your wife when she says, "How come you don't answer me?" And you always say,
no, don't tell them that. No, don't say that. We want to sell these son of a bitches. We don't want people sending them back. No, you can turn these things off and you can't hear your wife, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be stone deaf if the power goes out on these things.
Well, no,
you won't be able to hear a thing. So
again, you'll be back to where you started.
Not listening to your wife.
You'll be back to where you started, but let's talk about where you can go and where you can go.
If you pay extra, then they got ones that if you turn it off, you're completely deaf, and that way you can't listen to your wife.
They do. Again, they do not have this.
But costs extra.
They do not have this even for an extra cost as of present. But what they do have is a terrific price for the listeners on hearing aids. Jim, let's get to the finish line.
Well, I'll tell you what. All you got to do to get the high-quality, affordable hearing aids that you deserve for your ears with MD Hearing is go to shopmdhearing.com. That's shop, S-H-O-P, M-D, as in medical doctor. That's what it stands for usually. Hearing, everybody knows how to spell hearing. Well, Hearing.
Thank you.
Maybe the people who can't hear me don't know how to spell hearing because they can't hear how to spell it. ShopMDHearing.com and use the promo code JCE to get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. And they're adding a free extra charging case, which is a $100 value. How in the world can you beat these things? Some people will charge you thousands of dollars for some of these apparatuses or apparati. And then people will still say, hey, why have you got TV antennas sticking out of your ears? But these things, like I said, they'll be down there so deep, nobody's going to see these son of a guns. As a matter of fact, you'll have to send in the Army Corps of Engineers to try to find these things. That's how invisible they're going to be.
That is not how invisible they're going to be. You will be able to get them in and out whenever you need them. Don't worry. Don't worry. Just listen up.
Go to shopmdhearing.com and use the promo code JCE to get a pair of hearing aids, $297, free extra charging case, $100 value. And I can hear clearly now, the deafness is gone. I can hear all the people cussing at me.
Once again, MD Hearing. Jim, one last time, what's that promo code?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Promo code JCE. ShopMDHearing.com. $297, free charging case, $100 value. Do the math. You can't afford not to hear. What if you're standing in front of a train and they go, wah, wah, and you can't hear it? Well, see,